The seats are getting hot in New York as Brian Dable and Aaron Glenn are combined 1-9 in the first 10 games. Can each of them survive the season, and can they do to keep their jobs in the 2026? All this and much more coming up on this episode of Rich Sports Talk. And the seats, they are getting hot in New York. And let's be frank, this was an abysmal weekend for both the New York teams. Now, usually this is the day I would talk exclusively about the New York Giants. But when I looked it over and when I really thought about it, I thought that this was an appropriate show for both coaches. Now, am I claiming today that both coaches should be fired right now? No. But do I see troubling trends for both of these coaches going forward that really impacts their long-term futures? Yes. I think both of these men have different issues that need to be addressed, and both are on different timelines. Both have a lot of issues, but ironically, both could be out of a job by the end of this upcoming year. Because look, when you look at the state of New York football, it's abysmal. There's one win between the two teams. Teams are combined 1-9 for the first 5 weeks of the season. It has been embarrassing. And I talked a lot about Aaron Glenn yesterday. I'll leave him for a second. We'll get to him in a bit. And again, you can check out our poll on the community page. I have a poll for you guys. Let me know, which coach do you think will be back in 2026? Or I also give the option, do you think both of them will not be back in 2026? Again, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. Check us out wherever podcasts are streaming. And again, like and subscribe to help with the algorithm so we can get more great fans in here. So let's start off with Brian Dable. Yesterday was ugly, and it really felt like that was one of the games when you look at this Giants schedule, which, to be fair, is brutal. It is an absolutely brutal schedule. And New Orleans isn't an easy place to play. But if you were to circle spots on the schedule, and many Giant fans and Giant content creators I've talked to said the Saints was a game they expected to win. And I would look around this league and say, yeah, I would expect the Giants to beat the Saints. That is one of the few teams that you could look at the talent on the team. You could look at the quarterback position right now. That, to me, was a game where the Giants had to win. Instead now, the Giants are going to be 1-4 going into a Thursday night showdown with the Eagles, who just got beat and are not happy about it. Look, I can expect turnovers. Giants had 5, 2 interceptions. Look, Jackson Dart's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie quarterback. I'm fine with mistakes. What I'm not fine with is certain trends. When you look at this Giants offense, which has spent years trying to build this offensive line, years trying to add all these playmakers, and basically returned 10 of 11 starters to this season, the Giants right now are 20th in yards, 24 in yards per play, 28 in points per play, and once again had a abysmal game with the penalties. 95 yards worth of penalties. 95 against the Saints, who are not a good team. Brian Dable and the Giants are in this weird predicament right now. And the predicament is you find yourself in a position where you have a young franchise potential quarterback, and the decisions that you will make over these next couple of months will be vital to their development. We've seen it work and not work with coaches. We're seeing it with Caleb Williams now on a second head coach and a second season. It's very difficult when a young quarterback, especially a highly picked quarterback, has to get a new head coach for their second season. Because the first year, they're pretty much swimming. You want it for year 2 where they understand the playbook, they understand the offense, and they can just react. They can just go out there and play instead of learning a whole new offensive scheme, a whole new set of verbiage, a whole new scheme, a whole new way of attacking a defense in an offseason. Just when they're starting to get comfortable, now you put them in an uncomfortable position. And to me, this was one of the big things the Giants did wrong with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones had a very successful rookie season. They bring in a new coach in his second year. And granted, the short-term success, it worked. The Giants won 10 games and made the playoffs. But overall, you look at quarterbacks, when they get to the second coach, they tend to struggle, especially in that second year. But that also leads to another interesting problem. Let's say that Jackson Dart plays well down the stretch, but let's say the Giants finish with 4 wins. Do you then run into the situation is, okay, do we keep this coaching staff for a 5th season because we believe that they are the right people to develop the young quarterback that we have drafted? Or do we feel that there is an upgrade out there, especially because we have a trending young quarterback that maybe another coach would like to coach? I just look at both of these coaches in New York. And the one thing I always will look for in a coach is your side of the football. If your side of the football is a strength of your team and it is operating despite the other side of the ball, I believe in you more as a head coach. When I look at the Giants, their offense has been a major issue. And I also think that this was a very telling game as well. Because the Giants, this was their first game without Malik Neighbors, full game. If you are an offensive coach, you have to now scheme open. Now your number 2 receiver is your number 1. Your number 3 is your number 2. You have to now reinvent this offense and find a ways. And to be fair, I thought they were using Theo Johnson a lot more. I liked how they were getting the tight ends more involved, especially with Jackson Dart. That's a good security blanket. But overall, I look at this offensive game plans and I look at the success rate of this offense. It's not good enough. And it's also interesting. Brian Daboll leaves the Bills, but Josh Allen then goes on to MVP seasons when he leaves. Daniel Jones leaves the Giants and goes to the Colts. He could be a potential MVP candidate this year. The Giants are in this really hard position because what they have to do is figure out what is the best course of action for their young quarterback in Jackson Dart. Again, your comments, super chats, jump to the front of the line. We'd love to hear your opinions. But when I look at the track record for Brian Daboll, I look at a coach that has struggled to develop an offensive line. I look at a coach whose offense, outside of Malik Neighbors and having elite playmakers, doesn't score enough points. And I also look at a head coach who overall now, and this is with a playoff season, a 10-win playoff season, is 20-37-1 as a head coach. And the way this schedule looks, he is more likely to be a 20-25 under coach by the end of the season in terms of losses. This is a coaching staff that needs to figure it out, and they need to make Jackson Dart look great. Jackson Dart needs to be an ascending player at the end of the season if this staff and this regime wants to keep their jobs into 2026. And look, we saw flashes. I really like what Jackson Dart did in his debut. You have some nice pieces with Scadaboo on this offense. Brian Daboll, the next 12 games for the New York Giants. The 12 games, Giant fans, forget about the wins and losses. If you are a Giant fan, you want to see this quarterback grow in the position. You want to see this offense continue to get better week after week. You want to see creative game plans, and you want to see these offensive players improve. Because you have intriguing pieces. You have an intriguing tight end. You have depth at wide receiver. You don't have that number 1 horse anymore, but you still have talent in that wide receiver room. You have a very good power back who is a very good weapon for this team. There's a lot of pieces here. There's a lot to like with this offense. But right now, Brian Daboll is the chef, and he has to make an appealing meal for this ownership. Because you know this ownership group is furious with how the last few seasons have gone. And look, will Jackson Dart make mistakes? Absolutely. He's a rookie quarterback. But when I walk out of that game, I walked out of that game going, who was the offensive guru? Who was the offensive coach? Who was the better offensive coach in that game? And I'll tell you, it wasn't Brian Daboll. It was Kellen Moore. You look at the Saints. They arguably have the worst quarterback room in the National Football League. I mean, I was even on this air joking, would they even win a game? Joke's on me. The Jets are the only winless team still in the league. But I'll tell you, I see an innovative offense. I see creative designs. I see someone that is scheming open a lesser team than the Giants. And despite all the turnovers yesterday, the Giants, you look at that quarterback room, does that quarterback room intimidate you as a defense? For me, it doesn't. But look, I think Brian Daboll, we knew this was going to be a hot seat season after last year. But the big question is, how is this ownership group going to monitor this team? Are they going to monitor what I think they need to do is monitor the progression of their young quarterback, or are they just going to look at the wins and losses at the end of the season and make a decision on that? Because if they make a decision to pull the ripcord and move on from Brian Daboll, here's the other fact. Now you got to find another head coach. Now you got to find a head coach that works with this quarterback, and you need to have a head coach that maybe will even look you in the face and say, I don't like Jackson Dart. If we're picking in the top 5, I prefer Kid A over Jackson Dart. These are all difficult questions that the Giants will have to answer this offseason. But I will say, Brian Daboll, it's amazing how this league week to week is. Last week, it looked like this was a brimming foundation for the Giants. Jackson Dart looks great in his debut, and I still liked a lot of the things I saw in the Saints game when I rewatched the tape. There's a lot of things I like about Jackson Dart, his mobility, his ability to play off script, his touch to the tight ends. There's a lot I like with Jackson Dart. But now you look at this team could have easily gone into New Orleans, beaten a team that I really feel is one of the few teams on their schedule that they are truly better than, and go into this Thursday night game as a 2-3 football club with their rookie quarterback, 2-0 in his first 2 starts, heads of momentum, going against an Eagle team that just lost a heartbreaker against the Broncos. Instead, they're going in after multiple turnovers. They're going in after a horrendous loss, and they're going in the wrong direction. But again, let me know in the comments your thoughts on Brian Daboll. What does he need to do to survive the season? Comment below. Super chats jump to the front of the line. Let's move to the other side of town. Aaron Glenn, who again was having another banger of a press conference today. I don't like the one and done coach. I'll be frank. I really do think coaches need times, and it takes a long time to change culture. But there is a lot of disturbing things that I am seeing with the New York Jets that really, especially as a fan, is very bothersome. And I'll be frank, when Aaron Glenn was announced to be the head coach, I was okay with the hire. Personally, he wasn't my favorite hire for the Jets. I wanted someone with head coaching experience, or at the very least, if it was going to be a first-time head coach offense, because the Jets have gone to this well now for 20 years, and look at what the results have been. A first-time head coach that is a defensive coordinator. The only one in recent memory that has worked for any extended period of time was Rex Ryan. But Rex Ryan also brought a bravado and an attitude to this team that was desperately needed. And he was also coming in with a very good roster already assembled. I just look at this team right now. And again, I love how I never get calls during the day except when I'm working on here. But I look at some of the troubling things with the Jets defense. The Jets defense, which is supposed to be Aaron Glenn's baby. Aaron Glenn, defensive player in the NFL, defensive coordinator for the Lions. The Jets are having a historic year for their defense. Their defense was the first team in NFL history to start a season 0-5 and not force a turnover. And if they do not get a turnover against the Broncos in London, they will be the first team in a century not to force a turnover in their first 6 games. They have the most penalty yards in the National Football League, which is an area Aaron Glenn said they need to clean up the penalties and the discipline. We're going to have the refs at practice. We're going to have them here. Didn't get cleaned up. They are allowing 31.4 points per game, the worst in the NFL. Mind you, two of their games where the Jets now have 7 sacks in 5 games, one of the lowest in the NFL. The Jets pass rush went up against 2 offensive lines in Tampa and Dallas, where over 3 of the players were basically undrafted starters who were filling in because the injuries had decimated their offensive lines. And they could not get pressure in those games. The Jets have one of the highest blitz rates in the National Football League. However, they are the second worst efficiency at getting home on blitzing. This defense is horrendous. This defense is bad. And when you mentioned Rich Kotite in a sentence with a head coach, it's not a good look. I know Aaron Glenn, the story is a really appealing one. A former player for a team that was there during their worst season ever. I don't know why people keep calling me, so sorry about that. Here we go. So the Jets, once again, you look at this team and you look at this defense. This is supposed to be his best unit, and they have been absolutely horrendous. They lack discipline. They are not aggressive. They don't tackle well. I remember all preseason, we were excited. They're having physical practices with tackling. And instead, the Jets are one of the worst tackling teams in the National Football League. They had 13 missed tackles in a half against the Cowboys. I'll tell you this, too. What's really concerning with me, too, is when coaches have to scream and yell at grown men. Because let's face it, these are grown men. What's concerning to me is Aaron Glenn went on this fiery speech after Miami, ripping into the team, ripping them a new one. And there was a couple disturbing things about this. Number one, you found out after the game when players were asked, well, some of them had headphones on, didn't even hear the speech. So that's a great sign. But the next thing is they get ripped apart by their head coach. And that was the performance of the game against Dallas. Like I was saying with the Giants, I'm having hard times finding wins on the schedule. I'm looking at the Jets schedule and I'm going, damn, this is a rough go for the Jets. And here's the difficult thing with Aaron Glenn. I understand that he had all these great sayings before the season, but there's certain things, I don't know if he needs to be getting advised, I would hope, by some of the Jets. When you come in and you puff out your chest saying, we are built differently, we are going to compete. And one of your first moves is to move off of Aaron Rodgers, who, again, long-term, I think was the right decision. But you were taking away arguably the best quarterback the Jets have had since really maybe Chad Pennington off this team. And you made that move. You made that decision to move off from him. He said he wanted to keep playing, but Aaron Glenn made the decision, this is my football team. So with that move, you already alienated a part of this franchise that basically said, let's try it one more time with Aaron Rodgers, and let's see if we can somehow break this playoff drought. Then you basically, when you make that move, you're saying you're rebuilding. But all offseason, we're not rebuilding, we're reloading, we're not rebuilding, we're going to compete, we're going to compete. We were expecting like maybe a 6-7 win football team. The fact that the Jets look so outmanned every week is alarming. And when you look at all the rookie head coaches, these rookie head coaches took over worse situations with worse talent than the Jets had last year. And look at how they are doing. Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. You look at Ben Johnson. Mike Vrabel's an outlier because he was a former head coach. But you look across every new head coaching hire. If you were to ask Jet fans, who would you prefer, that head coach or Aaron Glenn? I feel like everyone would put up their hand and go, we'd want that head coach. Because with Aaron Glenn, the story around him is so romantic and you wanted it to work so well. And look, maybe there is a scenario where the Jets do turn it around at some point this season and win a couple of games. But I feel like this franchise needs someone that has head coaching experience. Because this is a huge turnaround, no matter how you look at it. And you want someone that has at least done the job and isn't learning on the job. And ironically, the hire that I liked the most was Steve Wilks, because I said, okay, at least you have someone with former head coaching experience that can help this transition. And Wilks' defenses look absolutely horrendous. They are nowhere near anyone. And the personnel usage on this team is baffling. I was rewatching the 22. Malachi Moore is a young player I like. But this team, explain to me how this team drafted a corner in the 3rd round, then traded for a corner a week ago to play in the slot, but they're playing a rookie safety who's never played corner in his life in the slot yesterday. They spent a draft pick to go and get a starting corner who they wouldn't play And then they would also draft in the third round, instead of a receiver, instead of a defensive tackle, instead of a defensive end, they drafted a corner. Look, I like the tape on A.Z. Thomas, but you're playing a guy that you drafted, a guy that's not even contributing to the team this year. And look, the moves they made this offseason are all on Glenn too. He picked Darren Muji to be the GM. He could have gone with Phil Savage, who had been a previous GM in the league. No, I got to go with the rookie GM. And this staff looks at tape week after week and says, yeah, Michael Clemens is an NFL player. Yeah, Tyler Barron's an NFL player. They're not. And the fact that they had multiple opportunities to bring in pieces to add to this defense is just criminal. And this is the problem. You want to have faith in a coaching staff. And where the Jets are going, it is clear that they are going to be picking in the top 5. If the draft were today, they're picking number 1 because they're the only winless team in the National Football League. Let me remind you of that. But when I look at this regime, what about it makes you say, I would trust them to draft a quarterback? I would trust them to develop a young quarterback. Because I'm telling you, I like certain things with Tanner Engstrom. But this Jets offensive line, and I saw it today, oh my God, all the pressures. Oh my God, all the sacks they allowed. Justin Fields holds the ball longer than any quarterback in the National Football League. The Jets are one of the best pass pro in terms of time. But this regime made the decision, we're going to go with Justin Fields over Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be our ride or die quarterback. And one of the things I said that I really thought could have helped this regime was take a dart throw on round 3 of a young quarterback. Just some quarterback where if this season went sideways and they had to put in a young quarterback and the quarterback showed progress and they showed that they could work with a young quarterback, maybe that would help them with the narrative that they could draft their own quarterback. But right now, if the Jets are picking in the top 3, and I was to ask Jet fans, do you trust this regime to draft the quarterback? I would say no. And look, they basically brought in a defensive coach to replace the former defensive coach. And Robert Saleh, I did not think was a great head coach. But his defenses were great. You looked at what they did last year. They at least had leads in games. They couldn't finish games. This year, they can't even compete. They can't even compete this year. And it looks like this team has already tuned out this head coach. They've tuned out the yelling. They've tuned out the screaming. They've tuned it out. Because they were embarrassed in primetime Monday night. You thought they would come back and fight against Dallas. It was worse. It was absolutely horrendous. But let's get to some of your comments right now. I honestly don't think it's coaching, man. These players are just playing bad. But I think that's a reflection of the coaching drones. You have to be in the right position. Yeah, I get caught both. Right players just bad right now. Like the thing though, Drones, is the players. This is the players they chose to go with. The Jets, you had easy outs for this coaching staff. You're coming in brand fresh. This coaching staff didn't have to pay Sauce Gardner. They could have waited a year. They decided to pay him because they thought he would be an asset. And right now, he has not been an asset. They could have moved on for Sherwood. In the moment, we as Jet fans would have not been happy. But I also was saying with Sherwood, if they don't think he's a fit to the scheme and they don't think he's a good linebacker, you don't have to pay him. You didn't draft him. Guess what? They paid him. He looks horrendous out there. It reminds me of the Mo Wilkerson contract. They went out and got Brandon Stevens. Even though and the ironic thing, he's actually been playing better the last couple of games, but he's still not worth that contract. They went out with the safety room they started with this season. They could have added more bodies. They had veteran players out there. But the other thing, too, that really I think is telling, and this is why I think with Aaron Glenn, I'm a bit more alarmed. Aaron Glenn made a decision which I do think can come back to haunt him. And I'm going to get to some more of your comments in a second. He made the decision to gut the veterans on this team. He could have gone into the season with Aaron Rodgers, and he decided not to. He could have brought in former players that he played with in Detroit, that he coached in Detroit to help get the message across. No, he could have brought in veteran defensive linemen to help with these young kids. He made the conscious decision not to have any veteran presence in this locker room because he wanted to be the leader of this team. He wanted to be the alpha in the room. And Drones brings up about the players not playing well. Well, I think their attitude is terrible. And I'm going to quote a great movie. Attitude reflects leadership. Attitude reflects leadership. And these players are not playing well. Well, they're also not being put in a good scheme. They're not being put in spots to succeed on this team. And that, to me, is on the coaching. We see them leave and play fine elsewhere. I'm done blaming young players. Was obviously our coaches, GM, ultimately the owner are the real problem. Look, he can't change the owner, but I agree with the other ones. These players saw off. Even going back to last year, they quit. This team, they could have had an overhaul. And I do think while there's going to be an overhaul, the question is who's going to be in charge of the overhaul. That's the big one. Again, Giants fans also can chime in about their thoughts on Brian Daboll, their state of the franchise as well. Would love to get your questions. Players were made soft by Saleh for sure, especially some of the sneaky players who received no proper accountability like Clemens. Yeah, like the thing too is the coaching is mind-blowing to me because now for another consecutive week for special teams, the special teams makes boneheaded plays. They're returning kicks that are 9 yards deep in the end zone. They don't let the kicks go out of bounds. Like, do the players know you gain field position by just letting the ball go and be a touchback? Like, it's just, I'm watching the film. Players are out of position. Michael Clemens is biting on every single play. It is just alarming. Like, these players are so out of position. Like, they're not buttoned up in this team. It's penalties. Like, we thought it was bad under Robert Saleh, but man, this is just absolutely horrendous. And the thing that I think is not getting talked about too is how much of these games are being made up in garbage time. Like, I was watching the video of the 2-point conversion, and you look at the stadium, it's empty. This team is just absolutely overmatched every single week. And here's the thing. Darren Muji, I know Rome wasn't built in a day, Aaron Glenn, but if you felt that there were certain players on this team that were bad for the culture, that you needed to get out in terms of the attitude, whether maybe it was Sauce Gardner, maybe it was Breece Hall, you can tell us who you think it is. And again, you didn't have to commit to Sauce Gardner right away. I think Sauce is still a talented player, but you didn't have to commit to him. You made him the highest paid corner in the NFL because you believed in him. But if you're going to now turn around and say, well, maybe he wasn't the best decision for the core, well, you made your bed with that decision. And I look at this core too. They didn't want to bring in other people. They could have brought in more veterans. They could have brought in other people from Detroit. They didn't. They changed the quarterback. They didn't add receivers. They added one tight end in the draft and then some free agent signings. Like, this team also too, like, the biggest thing I look at here is I look at just decisions that just seem so simple. This team wants to be a run-first offense, yet they put their second-best running back on a kick return and lose him for 8 to 12 weeks on a UCL injury. That, to me, is absolutely horrendous use of your personnel, and that goes to the coaching. This team is running the football when they're down in the third quarter like there's 50 minutes left in the game, and then kicking it when they're down 30-3. You're down. Go for it. It's 4th and 5. You need to score touchdowns. Like, I understand that you want Glenn to build something here. But there's not even a foundation. Wow, wait, we're in the basement. We're in the basement right now. We haven't even gotten a foundation. Forget a foundation. We're in the basement. We're going backwards. Like, what does this team do better than they did last year? I cannot think of anything. Like, what is one thing the Jets do well? I guess Nick Folk is a good kicker. I guess McNamara is a good punter. What does the defense do well? The offensive line, I think, is underrated. Great. But they don't have a quarterback that can move the football down the field. They don't have a quarterback that can dissect a defense. They don't have the playmakers on the offense to separate outside of Garrett Wilson. Like, what does this team do well? And I understand they approached free agency like a rebuild. Well, look at the young players they decided to go with. Their day 3 of the draft is alarming. Arian Smith has had zero impact on this team. They took a big risk on him, and it has blown up in their face. Tyler Barron is an NFL player, and they expect him to be a big piece of this defensive end room. I mean, I guess the only silver lining is Muji added the defensive tackles with Juwan Briggs, but thank God he did, because I can't even imagine how bad the defense would be without them. I mean, they went into a season, though, where you had your number one defensive end, Jermaine Johnson, coming off an Achilles, and you didn't think it'd be, I don't know, a good idea to have some depth in case he got hurt. Oh, and look what happened. He got hurt. And I understand that this is a rebuild, but even in a rebuild, look around the NFL. The Jets are the only winless team. I'm looking around at all these new head coaches. They are butting up, and I've at least seen flashes of what their teams can do. What can the Jets do? The Jets have looked absolutely overmatched and outcoached every single week. And the only one saving grace I can look at with Wild Wave is if this team somehow gets one of the top 2 picks and you have a chance to draft a young quarterback, maybe you can finally find a head coach that can come in and work with a quarterback. Because right now, I'm just seeing this team go the wrong way. And the problem is, Aaron Glenn had such a low bar. The bar was low, and it has just gone in lower and lower and lower. This team, we just want to see them compete, not make dumb penalties. Like, it's the same team as last year, but worse somehow. Like, they are a worse football team than they were last year, which is so hard to figure out. I don't know how we've gotten to this point. But the one thing I will say, too, is the Jets made this decision to go with Aaron Glenn. Now, we knew Mike Vrabel wasn't coming here when the Patriot job opened. But I was a proponent of get someone with head coaching experience. Now, I'll admit, I wasn't a fan of bringing Rex Ryan back. I know a lot of people will be chattering about that, especially with the way the season goes, just because I feel like he's been out of the game for too long, and I'm not sure what he'd do on the offensive side of the ball. But I just look at this team, and I look at this game on Sunday as a perfect microcosm. Schottenheimer for the Cowboys, we all laughed at being the head coach. Oh, it's just because Jerry can control him. I'll tell you this with Schottenheimer. Dallas's offense looks good. I know their defense is terrible, but he's an offensive coach. You know what? Their offense looks really good. Their offense yesterday, guess what? Down 4 offensive linemen, down their number 1 receiver. Well, okay, we're just going to move the ball at will down the field. They just looked. And meanwhile, the Jets, who have a defensive head coach, a D coordinator who was a previous head coach, couldn't stop the Dallas Cowboys yesterday, who, again, had 4 backup linemen. 3 were undrafted, and even the left tackle that started was a former 7th-round pick. And the Jets had 1 sack. Dak Prescott was so clean yesterday, he could have taken off his jersey and put it in the clean pile because he didn't break a sweat against this Jets pass rush. This defense is supposed to be even average with the talent they're supposedly have and the brain power they're supposed to have with this defensive staff. It is just infuriating. And one of the things I go back to, and I said this during the offseason, people ask me on this channel, and I was very honest, who is your number 1 coach? And look, I'll make an asterisk. Vrabel was number 1, but when the Patriots opened up, you knew where that was going. I looked at the coaches, and I still was a proponent of Brian Flores. Number 1, he was a former head coach. Number 2, he was a head coach that had an axe to grind in this division. I think Aaron Glenn wants to turn the Jets around. I know that Aaron Glenn wants the Jets to be good, but Brian Flores has something different. He wants to stick it up the you-know-what to the Dolphins for the way he was treated, how he was looked down upon for wanting Justin Herbert over Tua, which turns out to be the right decision. And also, I think he isn't happy with the Patriots for not giving him a head coaching job. That, to me, would have been the guy, because I think he would have had that extra fuel to add to the fire. I look at this team, and this is the team, like Aaron Glenn had all offseason, and Aaron Glenn had lot to say over this roster. They could have added more pieces in the draft, but they traded up in day 3 instead of getting more bodies to get players that don't even make an impact like Tyler Barron. They went into this season and said, you know what? They could have moved on from Sherwood and could have used the very easy explanation. You know what, guys? He's a very good player, but he just doesn't fit in our scheme. And we could have been like, okay, it's tough that we lose a good young player, but if he's not going to fit, don't pay him. They paid him. He doesn't fit in the scheme, and he looks overwhelmed. You didn't have to pay Sauce Gardner this offseason. You could have waited a season to see how he fits in this scheme, but you paid him, and he doesn't look comfortable in this scheme. You went out there and you spent $10 million on a safety who's bounced around the league, and he looks completely overwhelmed. You gave Brandon Stevens $12 million a year. You also gave A.Z. Thomas, and again, I'm not faulting A.Z. Thomas, but you spent all this money in the corner room. You've even traded for a corner, and their pass defense is horrific. It's horrific. You chose to go in this season with Michael Clemens as your break glass in case of emergency defensive end, who is not an NFL player. If we, the fans, look at the personnel and we know there is a major problem, and you're just saying, well, we didn't know. Did you watch any tape this offseason? Did you do any research? Did you even visit a Jets forum? Because they could have told you exactly what's going to happen. I expected 3 to 5, but as long as they look disciplined and competent, I would have been happy. They've somehow fallen way short of that and look way worse in every imaginable way. Kevin, you brought up a really good point. And I made this tweet at the Rich Sports Talk on X. Again, I keep confusing, but I posted on X. And I think this is very appropriate. One of the things that's also, I think, very troubling about Aaron Glenn is he's falling into Salah-isms, talking about how great practice is. Enough. Like we don't need to hear that. Like I made a post today, and I think it's very appropriate because I was thinking to myself, okay, if I was to advise Aaron Glenn what to say to the fan base in the press conference, because right now the fan bases are irate, and they have every right to be. They are frustrated. They're pissed with how this team looks like. The Jets are the butt of the NFL jokes right now. Like everywhere you look, they're the butt of the joke. Because again, they're winless. They are winless. And what I said earlier was this. I said, if I was advising Aaron Glenn on his press conferences, this is what I don't want to hear this week. Ship analogies, how great practice was, because I've heard that 1,000 times. This is not the same old Jets, and the 2021 Lions. Which takes me to this. Because I've heard that referenced a lot recently, and I want to point something out. The 2021 Lions started 0-10. They also had basically at that point an expansion-level roster. Let's not forget that. Let's also not forget Aaron Glenn, who's defending Wilks and saying, you know what? Dan Campbell didn't take play-calling ability away from me. You know what the Lions did, interestingly, after that season? Oh, that's right. They fired their OC to hire Ben Johnson after one season. So apparently, you can make coaching changes on a bad team. The Lions did. Look how that turned out. But with the Lions that year, yes, they were bad. Yes, they were 0-10, but they were feisty. They were in every single game. And when I mean in every game, they were in every game down to the wire. They weren't this mirage of, the game's somewhat competitive because the Jets fought back in garbage time. One thing I'm going to try to do from now on, especially if the games go the way they are going, is this. I'm going to try to keep track of Justin Fields' stats when the game is important or close and compare it to garbage time. Because I think there is a stark difference. And again, great for fantasy, but in terms of production for the Jets, not good enough. I just look at this team and I go, again, wow, great practice. I forgot the instant coffee and look at the tape. I guess they're not doing a good enough job, Wild Way, because I would have, I think, just sit down in a room with a Jet fan. They'll tell you 5 minutes what not to say at a press conference. The big thing when I look at the Lions is they were feisty. They fought. They were chippy. You could see how emotional when they were with with Dan Campbell when they won a game. This team doesn't look competitive. They've been blown out in multiple games. They don't look like they want to be there. Like, you just look at the body language, and it's just like one mistake and it's, oh my God, here we go again. The wheels are falling off. We're not going to compete. The game's over. It's just maddening. And Aaron Glenn made a decision. He could have gotten most of this roster very quickly, but he brought a lot of the guys back. He brought a lot of these players back. And right now they are 0-5. And I will say this. I know coaches need time, but here's the thing. This fan base has been waiting. You want to talk about time? This fan base has been waiting 15 years for relevancy. They're not going to let you fool around and figure this out. And if they feel like you are not in the right position, and look, Woody Johnson does not like to be embarrassed. And as frustrating as last year was, at least the Jets had some hope. The last 2 years with Rodgers, at least there was some sense that maybe something could turn around. You don't feel like there's anything to watch now. Like, even if this team drafted a young quarterback, there's no reason to watch this team right now. Because it's not like they're throwing a rookie quarterback into the, at least the Giants have that. The Giants have a young quarterback that you can maybe be excited about. I just look at how this team has been constructed and how this team has competed. The Cowboys do not have a good defense. The Cowboys' offense was shattered, their offensive line. The Buccaneers had no offensive line in their game. The Dolphins are a team that's likely going to fire their head coach. The Jets have lost to all those teams. The Jets are 0-5. They are the only winless team. And I'll finish with this because Wildway brings up a good point. I talked about this last night, and I made a short about it, so you can go check that on the channel. Wilks is an interesting issue for Saleh. I mean, so Jesus, they're blending together. I'm blending the coaches together. Once again, let me restart that. When do you replace Wilks is Wildway's question. Wilks, to me, is the break glass in case of emergency for Aaron Glenn. And when he does that move will be very critical. Now, I do think if he gets to the end of the season, he can easily move on from Wilks and maybe get another D coordinator. But it's how the season finishes. It's a lot different if he's has 5 or 6 wins. They're trending upward. Their offense is at least looking sound, and they finish the season on a good note. But if he waits to the end of the season to get rid of Wilks, and this team is 2-15, 3-14, I don't think he survives. I just don't think you survive that type of season. The other thing with Wilks that's very interesting, and why I think Aaron Glenn is wary to do it at this point, is I think he wants to wait to do it around some point in the midseason where hopefully Jermaine's healthy. Hopefully guys are at least now comfortable with the scheme. They understand, because again, a lot of these guys were zone-based players. They want to play man, but they're not comfortable, so they're trying to this weird in-between. This, to me, is going to be very fascinating, because if Wilks gets the rug pulled out from under him, then it's on Aaron Glenn. Because if Aaron Glenn's defense improves without Wilks, then that's a very good sign for this head coach. Okay, maybe it was Wilks making the bad play calls. Maybe Aaron Glenn is a competent defensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn can push the right buttons and has a better understanding of the defense. But here's the other side of it. He pulls the ripcord on Steve Wilks, and this defense is still horrendous. This defense doesn't get better. Then it's, maybe it isn't Wilks. Maybe it is this as a head coach. I think Wilks is a great deodorant right now for Aaron Glenn. There's certain players I brought up being, quote, deodorants on this team. I said the first 2 weeks, Brandon Stevens was a great deodorant for Michael Carter. And then we saw Michael Carter, the way he was playing. Now he's out and being injured. There's certain players that are deodorants on this team that cover up the stench of how bad other players are playing. I think Tony Adams has been a deodorant for, seeing at safety. It's not seeing at safety, Jesus. For the safety position with Cisco. To me, Wilks is a strategic domino for Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn knows he's not going to be a long-term part of the regime. The question is, when do you pull the Band-Aid? If you do it too late in the season, you either A, don't have enough time, or you have such a bad record that everyone's getting canned. Or if you do it early enough and your defense shows progression, that's a good indictment on the head coach. That's a good progress for the head coach. But if you wait too late and you wait to the last minute to move on from Wilks, it could just turn out to bite you in the butt. But the state of New York football, ladies and gentlemen, is just abysmal. And look, both of these head coaches have their warts, but here's the way I look at it. They have 12 games to prove us wrong. They have 12 games down the stretch now to show us what they can do. They have 12 games to show us that they can right their, quote, ships. Because if they can't, and if New York City, if we're looking at both of these teams picking the top 5 of the NFL draft, I would expect major changes for both teams. But you can also check out our community page and vote on what you think about these head coaches and their future beyond the 2025 season. Again, if you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. You can always listen to us wherever podcasts are available. Check out our community page where we have a lot of fun polls for you guys to interact with. And again, always interact during the live stream. If you don't want to miss our next live stream, subscribe. Again, we're doing a lot of great New York sports content throughout this. And look, I usually, like I said, this is my Giants day, but I thought it was important to talk about the state of New York football as a whole, especially with the hot seats that are the head coaches. But again, guys, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.